gone to the deleted items folder, and we'll click on send and receive to try and download a message from 199. This launches the connection, and from a shell we can determine, and notice this says it presents an authentication certificate. This means Outlook Express is attempting to connect to the server using TLS. Now let's just confirm our password once more. We'll allow it. We'll always allow it for the site, and it doesn't like the password. Let's try it again. Send and receive. And let's try as the user Linux CBT. Perhaps we just don't have the right password. And we'll tell it to process the email account. This is the PGP software popping up. We'll cancel it. And we'll just try to download the messages without PGP's assistance. So send and receive. Now we're checking Linux CBT's mail as opposed to root's mail. So that means from the Linux box we'll need to send messages to Linux CBT and double check root's password. The reason why we're unable to log in as root is because we've forgotten root's password, which happens. So now let's connect to Linux CBT serve 1, which is the .10 IP address. Log in as root, and it's not taking the password. We'll try it again once the prompt returns. And if you're impatient, we can launch a new session independent of this session and reconnect to the host. And it still doesn't let us in. This is the same problem we faced trying to connect earlier. Now it lets us in. That's more like it. So in this shell, now we've regained access, so that means we remember the password. So in this shell, we'll launch MUT and create a new message to the user Linux CBT at linuxcbt.internal, because DNS will take care of sending users to the appropriate system. Testing email using POP3, and we'll ignore the body and just Shift:WQ Y to send. We'll quit, and then momentarily when we click on send and receive, the message will be downloaded into the user's mailbox. So there's a message. This message was sent to Linux CBT at linuxcbt.internal from root on the remote system. Here's the fully qualified name of the host, the FQDN. And if our SMTP server is able to find Linux CBT serve 1, we'd be able to respond to the message. So we're pulling messages using POP, and in fact, let's go to Tools Accounts just to double check the actual POP3 settings. It is POP3, and under Security, no signing certificates have been assigned, and POP3 security has not been turned on for incoming mail. So with that said, let's turn on POP3 security. The server requires a secure connection. What we saw earlier was simply PGP interfering with the process. POP3 secure uses 995, which is enabled on the Dovecot server. Also, as we've mentioned, we had the ability to leave the messages on the server when using POP3. Below we see leave copy of the message on the server for a set number of days. Now we'll try to send and receive again, and this will use the SSL connection. We'll just tell PGP to stay out of our connection and interact with Outlook Express. We'll continue using the server, and now we're connected securely using SSL port 995. We know we are because in Tools Accounts, the switch or the checkbox is set to POP3 secure. Otherwise, it uses plain old 110. Now, insofar as IMAP is concerned, you'd need to change the protocol in order to download messages using IMAP. We can do so by recreating the connection altogether. Let's go ahead and remove this profile. And we'll add a new profile, a mail profile we'll call it, same email address that's in memory, root at linuxcbt. This time let's call it simply internal. That's how we'll receive messages anyway, since Outlook Express has the ability to maintain multiple accounts. And this time we'll use IMAP, same IP address for incoming and outgoing, and we'll use Linux CBT's account with the appropriate password. We'll finish, and then this will attempt to connect. And when you use IMAP, a separate tree is created over to the left with the IP address or name of the server's IMAP connection. Now it says the IMAP server has rejected our connection. That's always a credentials issue. That means we've indicated the wrong password. So here we see a tree distinct or independent of the default inbox where POP3 messages flow. And this view represents messages on the server. For example, if from the shell we were to send a message using MUT from serve1, new message, to linuxcbt at linuxcbt.internal, and the subject indicate testing IMAP, and in the body we'll insert testing IMAP from Outlook Express, escape shift:/WQ, and then send the message. This message will be available using MUT on the remote server, but will also be available using IMAP if we click on send and receive. So momentarily we'll see the message, there it is, but this message remains on the server. We can interact with it, make changes to it, so on and so forth. How about sending a message? We'll create a mail and send it to root at linuxcbt serve4 linuxcbt internal. Testing SMTP, and this is a postfix matter. Using postfix to relay message. We'll send using control, enter, and this will attempt to send the message using the postfix server. We'll tell PGP to ignore it. We don't want it to be involved in the process. It's popping up and the license has expired, but nonetheless, as long as the outbox is cleared and the sent items reveals what's been sent, then that tells us that the message is gone. So we sent it to root at linuxcbt serve4. Let's confirm that it was indeed sent by SSHing to linuxcbt serve4. We'll accept, as we have no choice, of course. Authenticate, and then launch MUT, where we should see the message as root, and there it is. So we've received the message, and if we reply to this message, it will be sent to linuxcbt at linuxcbt.internal. And also notice the header included by the PGP software, including the host on which it was created. We'll reply to linuxcbt as opposed to root, and insert simply got it. Send the message, now it's gone, and momentarily the message will appear in the IMAP inbox of the user linuxcbt, and there it is. So here's a response, got it. So using IMAP and POP3 is really straightforward. Using POP3 and IMAP Secure is also really straightforward. Just navigate to the properties of your account setting and then change the connection to ensure that it requires SSL. POP3 uses port 995, IMAP uses port 993. Click on OK, send and receive. This will refresh your folder list, and providing there's no problem accepting the SSL certificate, the default certificate that was generated, you should have no problem whatsoever receiving the message. And also, providing you're able to relay through your postfix server, you should have no trouble accessing your messages. Again, an RPM query list of Dovecot reveals the included files. All the protocols are turned on by default. We did mention that there's an SSL config file located in etc pki Dovecot. Let's navigate briefly into etc pki Dovecot. Take a brief look at the Dovecot OpenSSL conf file. This file contains template information for the country, locality, so on and so forth. If you uncomment these items, you can generate a new key based on the values in the file and have Dovecot use it the next time you restart it. Beneath Dovecot, we see two directories, certs, which contains the public key, just like with the SSL server, and that's the public key to Dovecot PM. And we also see a private directory which contains the secret key. This secret key is again similar to the private key or the .key file used on the Apache server. You'll find that all SSL and TLS PKI compliant programs work in a similar fashion. And that is, they have a public key private key pair, or a PKI setup, such that you have to maintain two sets of keys, and the private key tends to be heavily restricted in terms of who has access to it. You can again generate a new key by updating the contents of Dovecot openssl.cnf and using genkey with the following file. That'll generate a new item. Now again, just ensure that the service starts when the system starts. List Dovecot to be sure that it's on, and we see that it's on in the various run levels that are of interest, 3 and 5. So again, Dovecot's very simple to set up. You install it, it enables the appropriate ports by default. Next at NTLP, grep, IMAP, and you'll see, or in this case, Dovecot, and you'll see IMAP as well as POP3 for both secure and clear text-based communications. Once it's up and running and your users have access to it, you'll be able to download messages using either protocol, and providing you've configured the email clients correctly with an SMTP server, you'll be able to route messages outbound to remote hosts relatively quickly. So that's a little bit about implementing Dovecot. It's really not terribly difficult to implement. It's relatively straightforward.